Hello and welcome back. Alright, so we're back at the sawmill, and the object now is to get all the lights on, which was what I originally had intended. Get the sawmill off this property onto mine. I'll feel more comfortable having friends or family come over, giving me a hand, versus going over to this person's house to work on it. And also, when I get it functioning, I can be using it to mill up the trees on my property as I go through and do all the other little knick-knacky things that I want to get done. But it'll be on my property, and then the time isn't of an essence. They'd like to get the sawmill out of here as soon as possible. They're not rushing me, but there's a lot of cleanup work to do here, and the sawmill's in the way. So just trying to accommodate them and make it safe to move. All right, so here's some of the stuff I got for it. I got a bunch of marker lights for being as long as it is. There's legal requirements for where these need to be placed. I have both red and yellow. I have new tail lights, so it has backup, stop, and turn. I have a wiring block to wire it correctly. So I have a 7-pin plug that'll plug into my dump truck, and then that will go into here, and then I can run all my wires correctly out to the different functions. So the markers, the tail lights, the brake lights, turn signal, backup light. The axles should have electric brakes. And then I have a light for the license plate. I have various color wires to help keep track of which one's which as you run it to the different lights. I have DOT tape. Because of its length, it also needs reflective tape for the DOT to be legal. I have a wire loom to keep my wires neat and protected. Got loom clips. Like I said, there's various different colors. That one's blue, the one out there was brown. Here's more of the marker lights. Like I said, I got the amber, and then I have the red, depending on where on the vehicle it is. I got a brake controller for the dump truck. Different eye and butt connectors. These are also turn signals. Okay, so I got all the holes drilled to run the wires. So I drilled 1/4-inch holes to hold wire loom brackets. Unfortunately, the brackets that I got, the push section is too short. The loom holders that I had gotten, which would have been nice, they're a round clip, but this pin is too short because the steel I'm going through is 1/4 inch thick. So these would just barely poke through, but not far enough for these little tabs to catch and hold the clip on. So these just kept pulling out. So I went back online, and basically it's a zip tie, but it has a Christmas tree connection on it. So this also went through the 1/4 inch hole that I drilled. So here's one installed, and you can see it sticks through on the other side, so it holds the connection. I have my wire loom, and then I drilled a 3/4 inch hole through these cross members for the wire loom to run through. And so I did that all the way down, and then came back up so I came back up and it's going into the engine compartment. There's a lot of weird wiring that I'm trying to figure out as well for on the engine, and to create it so that I can have a keyed switch to turn this on and off. And then this drooping line here, that is the return. No, that is, this drooping line here is the hydraulic feed line to the hydraulic pump that is mounted on the engine. And then, you know, there's just a lot of long hoses that, if this was going to be used as I intend to use it, as a mobile sawmill with the ability to move, you know, it can sit in one place for a long time, but I would like the ability to move it. These hoses and wires need to be cleaned up so that they don't come off and drag while you're moving from location to location, and then you know, then you're out of commission until you fix it on the new site, which may be nowhere near any place that has any parts. So it will be corrected and installed correctly. This line here, this is the fuel line. Like I said, this tank is the fuel tank, that tank is the hydraulic tank, and they run up under. So with my nylon fuel system that I have, I'll install a new fuel line from the tank to the engine. Do have a battery box that'll get installed over here. So I'll have the battery protected and contained. Legally, you're supposed to have your marker and turn signals on the outside corners of the vehicle. So this one can go here, and that's all legal because that is the outside edge of the sawmill. Now, if you look at it, you only have this narrow width here, but that is the other outside corner of the sawmill. but it's not in the rear. So I'll put another one of those taillights over there, but because I know people, how they are, I have these as well. I bought two, but I'll probably only need one. So I'll put this one here so that it'll act as another stoplight, and it'll also be hooked up to the right-hand directional. So I'll have a right-hand directional like that over there, but then this one will also blink when I go to make a right-hand turn when it's hooked up. So anyone that's directly behind the sawmill hopefully won't run into it. Okay, so this unit here is 12.5 inches long. The holes are 3/8 of an inch in from either end. And then I have it set up to be 1.5 inches from this outside edge. And then exactly 1/2 inch from wire to wire. So if I drilled a 1/2 inch hole, it'd be a little tight. So if I drill a little oversized hole, then these wires will go through. This is 1 inch wide, so that will still cover. So we'll get that drilled out. I'm using a number 6 machine bolt, so that's 1/8 inch. So I'm drilling a 5/16 to give myself a little wiggle room on the hole. Hello.
I'm leaving. I can leave the living room door unlocked. That way if you need to use the restroom or whatever.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, all right. See you later.
See you tomorrow at church. Alright, so the biggest I have in this kit is a 1/2. So we'll drill the 1/2. And then I do have some step drills. And I do have some cutting oil for the larger holes. Okay, then we take step drill, enlarge the 1/2 inch hole, fish that through. Okay, then we take a number 6 machine screws, or bolts actually, because they take a nut, slide them in, number 6 washers. And all of these are stainless steel. Probably overkill, but do it once. And then some number 6 nylon insert nuts. And we'll drop them on the ground, lose them in the dirt. So that's always helpful. All right, and then we'll just tighten those down when the time comes. So these here, they do have a reflective portion of them. They do have DOT numbers on them, so they're DOT approved. And you gently pry the lens off. And then the amber ones, they have their ground wire short, so your screw that you put in to hold it will be your ground. For whatever reason, the reds have both wires coming out, and so you have to have a remote ground versus the ambers. You just put your screw through, tighten it down, and it grounds itself through that screw. Okay, after taking a couple seconds of overthinking this, I can just take this white wire after I go through, loop it back around, and stick it onto the bolt as it comes through the frame on the other side. So it's going to basically do the same thing as the amber, just on the exterior versus the interior of the light. But it will be grounding on one of the holding screws. I want these in the middle of the C channel here. It is 8 inches wide. So if I come down 4 inches, scribe a line, I have the holes on that, so I come in a 1/2 inch on that line, and then 3 inches away. So now I have my 2 marks there for the holes, and then I need a hole for the wire here, so that just goes right here. Just remark my centers there for a little better. So now I can drill my holes for this side marker. The hole for the wire is a 1/4 inch, but it already has this eyelet installed. I mean, I could cut it off, but why? So I'll drill a 1/4 inch hole, kind of egg it out, and then squish this down a little bit to fit it through the hole, and then it can always be flattened out once it's through. out that hole a little bit, concentrating more upwards so that hopefully we don't get below this. Took and squished that down a little bit just to help it squeeze through the hole a little better. Not quite enough. Tap a little bit more, and there it goes, right through. Pop your lens off. Take your number 6 machine screws. Pop them through the holes. Put washers on. Then we take our ground that we squashed down, stick that on one of the screws, and then I am putting a secondary washer just to give that eyelet some support. Put our nylon nuts on. Screw, eyelet, washer, and nut. And then after we're all done, we'll go back and tighten everything down. When you do go to tighten them, remember they are only plastic, so don't go all King Kong on them and snap your plastic. But you do want to make them firm. And then we'll just take my lens and just gently pop it on to keep it out of the way as I go around the trailer and put everything else on. So that's how that works, and then so I'll run around and get everything put in. So I'll bring you back when I install the block, the header block for all the wiring, and I'll run you through how the wiring goes at that time too. Okay, so here we have the inside of the box. We have our 7 wires. So green for normal trailer wiring. So green is going to be your tail light and running lights. Your black is going to be for 12-volt battery power. So if you had an auxiliary battery in your trailer, that's your 12-volt power supply. Your yellow is your backup lights if your trailer has backup lights. Your brown is your right turn and brake signal. Your red is your left turn and brake signal. Your blue is your electric brake wire. And your white is for ground. So if you look at these posts, you have white, black, yellow, red, green, brown, and blue. So you hook these wires up to those, and then you run your pigtails out to the trailer section. So you have your your wire junction box all nice and secure, weather tight. All your connections are weather tight. Alright, so you're going to want to strip your wires back. Again, there's several different styles of wire strippers. You can even use a knife if you don't have wire strippers. This one here in particular has two jaws that come down. This one will grab the wire, and then this one comes down and grabs it, and then it pulls the two apart while grabbing the outside sheath, and it will allow you to strip the sheathing off. Then you take your fitting, depending on what size wire you're using and what it's going on. So make sure I'm using eyelets, so make sure the eyelet goes on the screw, which it does. And that just goes on. And this is a blue connector, so we'll use the center, which is for blue connectors. Make sure we're in all the way. Crimp it down. Test it, make sure it doesn't pull apart. Then hit it with a heat gun. It's the DeWalt cordless heat gun. So that shrunk down right down to the wire. So that'll make a waterproof connection. And since the wires are in the box, this connection's inside the box, which is already watertight, I'm not going to bother with the extra shrink wrap. But when I go and do all the wires out here, I will do both the shrink connectors, and I will also do an additional shrink wrap to just keep as much moisture out of these as possible. So that's an example of that, and I'll get this done and I'll bring you back when I'm running the wires out to the lights. Okay, for those who don't know, there's basically two different types of crimp connectors that you can use to put wires together. You have the ones that have a plastic covering over them, and with this style you have ones that will shrink when you heat them and ones that won't. If you're working indoors, no weather, you can use either. You can also use the ones that don't have the plastic covering, and if you use those, you do need to put shrink wrap over the connection so it doesn't touch anything and make it electrically conductive. So this product here is a little plastic tube that when you heat it up with sort of heat, could be a lighter, could be a heat gun, could be whatever other source you want, will shrink in diameter and make a watertight connection. For crimping the connections, you have two different styles depending on what you're using. If you're using the connectors without the plastic covering, you can use this type of connector. It has a point here that will crimp the metal, but you don't want to use this on the plastic connectors because it will puncture the plastic and make it a moot point of having the plastic. If you are putting shrink wrap over your plastic, which is a very good idea on outdoor applications, then in theory you could use this. But more so if you're doing the plastic connectors, you want something like this. It has smooth jaws, and it will crimp it and not puncture the plastic. If you are doing outdoor applications, then you want to use the plastic connectors that shrink. So these will shrink down with the heat gun, same as that tubing I showed you. And for added protection, I'll be using these, shrinking them down, and then sliding some tubing over that just for added protection, since the sawmill is 100% in the weather. Unlike if it was in an engine compartment, you have the hood protecting everything. So we'll move forward with that. Okay, to make it easier to run the wires, got the spools here. Just grabbed a piece of black iron pipe. So I have the 3 spools on there, and they'll just unfurl as I pull them versus trying to untwist. This will also help keep the wires from wrapping around things, hopefully. You know, we'll see how it goes. So we've got some tape. We'll just tape the wires together. These are the 3 colors that are needed for the right hand light. So we'll just wrap those together to facilitate pulling them a little easier. Now all the wires are basically just running loose right now. You know, I'm not worried about exact length. All right, so we've already had a change of plans. Sorry about the sun. So, all right, so we've already had a change of plans. In order to save some wire, I had intended to run all the wire down to the end, you know, then over, back up, down to the end, then come back and go over to the lights. But I think I'm going to take the right hand lights and break them out of the loom here, run another loom across over to the tail light over there, and then run the colors for my auxiliary tail light. Okay, so here we have these 2 marker lights come through. So even though this connection is an insulated connection and the connection has an anti-corrosion chemical in it, I will, as a secondary precaution, put a sleeve over the entire section as well, just to keep as much moisture out of there as humanly possible. And then that'll go into the wire loom, and then I will run little 3/8 lines up to here. Is it overkill? Yeah. But this is also going to be in an environment with a lot of moving parts and bark and bits of wood that could fall off and catch things, and so I'm just trying to give it as much protection as humanly possible. So we'll just let that cool off for a couple minutes. Yeah, looks like it could go a little tighter too. Now let me tighten it down a little more. So I will put a link in the description for all the stuff that I'm using here if anyone's interested. It will be an Amazon link, not a sponsor, and it will be an affiliate link just for full disclosure. So if you were to go on and buy it, I get a little tiny commission, but for driving traffic to Amazon. So just full disclosure there. All right, so that's had a few minutes to cool down. So now I'll stuff this in to the wire loom and then hit it with some electrical tape just to seal up this area to keep the wire from pulling out. So let me get that going. This electrical tape too is it's a fabric tape. The reason I got that is the plastic tape tends to degrade in the sun, and also with the cold it will crack and stop sticking to itself, and in the heat the adhesive oozes out and it just makes an ugly mess. So I thought I'd try this fabric tape. See, hopefully that works well. Alright, so now we'll just take two little sections of 3/8 and we'll cut this at an angle so that when it's sitting on the other loom, it should hopefully mesh more evenly. Oh, a little long. Alright, so there's that. Repeat the same on this side. And then this will sit up in here. This will sit up in here like this. Once I get the other wire loom on the other line. And I'll move down, keep moving down the sawmill. You know. So right now the only wire that needs to actually come out of the loom is the green one, because that's for the marker lights. So I will bring you back after I've got it wired. Okay, so something that I decided to do out here on the fender, since it has the potential of getting damaged more easily, is I went with spade connectors. It'll be inside the wire loom here, and that way if this gets broken, it's easily replaced. I don't have to splice as much. And the nice thing about spade connectors too is you can see this one's blue, this one's red. The spade is generally the same size across the color lines. So even if this was a yellow connector for the largest size wire, it would still plug into a red. So something to keep in mind if you're wiring something that you think has the potential of getting damaged and you want to replace it easily, consider spade connectors. Another tool I picked up is Sanuki, I assume, or Sanook, not exactly sure. Anyway, it is a battery or a large, it's a crimping tool for large crimps. So it came with the crimper, some cutters, and it came with an assortment of ends and some shrink tubing for doing the connection. So this will go onto the starter. There's the shrink wrap. I got some 2-gauge copper to make my connection to the battery, to the starter. And then what I'm gonna do is run the ground from the engine block to the frame, and then from the battery to the frame. So that should get my ground connection, and then I'll run the positive from the battery up to the starter. And then the plan is to install an ignition switch to then allow me to start the engine without having to jump start with the way it was done before, with wires touching batteries and then shutting it off by grounding it out to the frame. And it's a lot of things that were done that yes, they worked, but it's not ideal, and I'd like to try and get it working correctly and easily.